In March 2023, inside the gilded ballroom of Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump said something that should have stopped the financial world in its tracks. "We used to have a thing called the gold standard," he said. "It was beautiful. We had real money. Now we have paper backed by nothing. That will change." Most reporters ignored it. They wrote it off as nostalgia. But in the quiet corners of the global gold market, the whales started buying. Then, in July 2024, he doubled down in Iowa. "On day one, I will restore sound money to America. The dollar will be strong again, backed by something real." Donald Trump does not speak in accidents. He speaks in signals. And if you look at the people standing in his shadow, Judy Shelton, the gold standard advocate, Robert Lighthizer, the economic nationalist, Steve Bannon, the disruption architect, a terrifying pattern emerges. They aren't just planning a tax cut. They are planning the most radical economic maneuver in 96 years. The target date is 2027. The objective is a forced return to a gold-backed dollar. But this isn't about nostalgia. This is about survival. It is a preemptive strike in a currency war against China and the BRICS alliance. And to win this war, the US government will execute the largest wealth transfer in human history. They will revalue gold by 10x or 20x. They will wipe out $37 trillion in debt. And they will shatter the purchasing power of every American holding paper dollars. This isn't speculation. This is pattern recognition. We have been here before. I am going to show you the historical blueprint they are using. I will show you the mathematical inevitability that forces their hand. And I will explain why 2027 is the year the dollar as we know it dies and is reborn as something else entirely. To understand the future, we must exhume the past. Most people think the gold standard ended because it was old-fashioned. It ended because it was an obstacle to power. From 1879 to 1933, the US dollar was a contract. A $20 bill was a claim check for 1 ounce of gold. This kept the government honest. They couldn't print money they didn't have. But by 1933, the Great Depression had crushed the economy. President Roosevelt needed to print money to fund the New Deal, but the gold standard handcuffed him. So, he broke the handcuffs. On April 5, 1933, he signed Executive Order 6102. It didn't just end convertibility, it criminalized ownership. Americans were ordered to turn in their gold coins and bars to the Federal Reserve. The government paid them the official price, $20.67 per ounce. If you refused? 10 years in federal prison. Millions complied. They handed over their wealth. Then came the theft. Once the gold was safely in government vaults, Roosevelt passed the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. He revalued gold to $35 per ounce. Overnight, the dollar was devalued by 69%. The citizens who surrendered their gold at $20 watched the government profit from their obedience. The government instantly created billions in new equity on their balance sheet, allowing them to print more money. This is the playbook: confiscate, revalue, inflate. It happened in 1933. It happened again in 1971, when Nixon temporarily closed the gold window, severing the dollar from gold entirely and birthing the age of pure fiat currency. That age is now 54 years old. The average lifespan of a fiat currency system is about 50 years. We are living on borrowed time. And the debt collectors are at the door. Why is a reset inevitable? Because the math is broken. The US national debt is $37 trillion. The debt to GDP ratio is 120%. But the killer metric is interest. We are now spending $1.2 trillion a year just to service the debt. That is more than the military budget. It is more than Medicare. The government is borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money it already borrowed. This is a Ponzi scheme by definition. There are only 2 ways out of a debt trap this size: default, which destroys the US empire instantly, or inflate, printing money until the debt is worthless in real terms. They will choose inflation. But they can't just print blindly, or we become Venezuela. They need an anchor. They need to restore confidence while simultaneously destroying the debt. That anchor is gold. The domestic debt crisis is the fuel, but China is the spark. For 50 years, the US enjoyed the Petrodollar monopoly. If you wanted oil, you needed dollars. That monopoly is dead. Saudi Arabia is selling oil for Chinese yuan. The BRICS alliance is openly building a rival payment system. They are hoarding gold. In 2022, central banks bought 1,136 tons of gold. In 2024, they bought over 1,000 tons again. Who is buying? China, Russia, India, Turkey. They are dumping US treasuries and buying the only asset Washington cannot freeze. China officially claims 2,200 tons. Insiders believe they hold over 20,000 tons off the books. They are preparing to back the UN with gold. If China launches a gold-backed trade currency, while the dollar is backed by $37 trillion of debt, the dollar loses reserve status overnight. The US standard of living collapses by 40%. Donald Trump knows this. His advisors know this. They know they cannot let China move first. This is why the reset is coming. It is a defensive weapon disguised as monetary policy. But to execute it, they need to follow the 1933 playbook step by step. And the first step is the most dangerous one: the emergency. How do you reset the world's most powerful currency? You don't ask Congress for permission. You don't hold a referendum. You declare an emergency. The legal framework for this reset is already in place. It has been sitting on the shelf like a loaded gun. Trump doesn't need to pass new laws. He just needs to activate the old ones. The Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917 and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. These laws give the president near-dictatorial power over the financial system during a national emergency. Roosevelt used them in 1933. Presidents have used them to sanction terrorists. In 2027, the enemy won't be a country. It will be the debt. The justification will be framed as national security. Trump will stand at the podium and say, China is attacking the dollar. BRICS is trying to destroy our way of life. To save America, we must secure our monetary sovereignty. Once you frame economics as war, confiscation becomes patriotism. The reset begins with restriction. Unlike 1933, they probably won't send agents to search your basement for gold coins. That is too analog. They will use the banking system. The executive order will likely prohibit American citizens from holding more than a trivial amount of gold, perhaps 5 ounces. Anything above that must be surrendered to the Treasury. But I won't comply, you say. You won't have a choice. They will impose a 90% tax on gold sales not made to the government. They will ban gold exports. They will delist gold ETFs like GLD or force them to liquidate their holdings to the Treasury. They will choke the market until the only legal buyer is Uncle Sam. They need the gold. The U.S. currently holds 8,133 tons. That is a lot, but it's not enough to cover $21 trillion in money supply unless the price changes. This brings us to the core mechanism, the revaluation. Right now, gold trades around $2,700 an ounce. The U.S. gold stockpile is worth roughly $520 billion. Compared to our debt, that is a rounding error. But watch the alchemy of price fixing. To back the US dollar with gold, even partially, you need a coverage ratio of about 25% to 40% of the money supply. The M2 money supply is roughly $21 trillion. To back 25% of that, you need $5 trillion in gold. How do you turn $520 billion into $5 trillion without mining a single new ounce? You change the price tag. You set the price of gold at $20,000 per ounce. Overnight, the U.S. Treasury's assets jump from $500 billion to $5.2 trillion. The balance sheet is healed. The dollar is now backed by a fortress of equity. But notice the timing. The revaluation happens after the confiscation. But the real magic trick is what this does to the debt. This is the part the economists whisper about. When you revalue gold to $20,000, you are mathematically devaluing the dollar by 90%. A dollar that used to buy 1/2000th of an ounce now buys 1/20,000th. What happens to the $36 trillion national debt? It is denominated in dollars. The government still owes $36 trillion, but they pay it back with dollars that are worth 10% of their old value. In real terms, the debt burden collapses from $36 trillion to $3.6 trillion. The debt is erased. Not by paying it off, but by destroying the currency it is written in. Who pays for this? The creditors. China holds $800 billion in U.S. treasuries. Japan holds $1.1 trillion. Pension funds hold trillions. When the reset hits, they get paid back every cent they are owed. But those cents are worthless. It is a soft default. It is the largest theft in history, executed via the printing press and the price of gold. Once the debt is restructured and the gold price is fixed, the US announces the new sound dollar. Trump declares victory. We have the strongest currency in the world again. Foreign nations, seeing the gold backing, stop dumping the dollar. The US retains its reserve currency status, but on a new, golden foundation. It preempts the BRICS move, it checkmates China. But the cost is paid by the American saver. If you held cash, you lost 90% of your purchasing power. If you held bonds, you were annihilated. If you held gold and the government took it, you missed the windfall. This is the plan. The question isn't if they will do it. The question is when. And when we look at the historical cycles, one date lights up on the dashboard like a red warning light. 27. Why 2027? Why not next year? Why not 2030? Because history doesn't just happen, it rhythms. Monetary systems have a shelf life. They are born, they age, they bloat, and they die. And the average lifespan of a fiat currency regime is roughly 50 years. Let's look at the timeline of American money. 1879. The US returns to the gold standard after the Civil War inflation. 1933. FDR confiscates gold. That's a 54-year gap. 1971. Nixon closes the gold window. The birth of pure fiat. That's a 38-year gap. 2027. The proposed reset. The gap from 1971 is 56 years. We are 54 years into a 50-year system. We are living on borrowed time. The gears of the current order, the Petrodollar, the Treasury bond, the SWIFT system, are grinding metal on metal. The machine is overdue for an overhaul. But there is a darker, historical echo. 1927, exactly 100 years prior to our target date. 1927 was the peak of the roaring 20s. The stock market was invincible. The debt was manageable. The Federal Reserve was confident. 2 years later, the world collapsed. 6 years later, the gold was seized. Centennial cycles are powerful. They represent the limit of human memory. The generation that remembers the pain of inflation dies off, and the new generation repeats the mistakes. 2027 is the mathematical terminus of the current debt supercycle. The second reason is political necessity. Assume Donald Trump takes office in January 2025. The first year is chaos, appointments, immediate fires, executive orders. The second year, 2026, is the midterm election. Politicians are timid. They don't want to rock the boat before a vote. But 2027, that is the legacy year. It is the third year of a second term. The president cannot run again. He is free from the shackles of re-election. He is thinking about history books, not poll numbers. By 2027, the debt crisis will no longer be a chart on a screen. It will be a crisis in the streets. Federal debt will cross $45 trillion. Interest payments will hit $1.6 trillion. The bond vigilantes will be attacking the Treasury market. The president will have the political cover to say, "The system is broken. I am the only one brave enough to fix it." Emergency measures are rarely taken when the sun is shining. They are taken when the storm breaks. The storm forecast is 2027, but the most urgent driver isn't domestic. It's China. This is a game of 4D chess. The BRICS alliance is currently developing a gold-backed trading currency. Their target launch window, 2026 to 2027. If BRICS launches a gold-backed currency, while the US dollar is still backed by faith and credit, i.e. nothing, the dollar dies. Oil producers will demand the gold currency. The global south will dump dollars. The US cannot allow this. The 2027 reset is a preemptive strike. If the US returns to gold first, or immediately after BRICS makes their move, it neutralizes the threat. Trump can stand up and say, "The dollar is now the strongest currency on earth. It is backed by the largest gold reserves in the world. Why trust Beijing when you can trust Washington?" It undercuts China. It saves the empire, but it sacrifices the American saver. To win the geopolitical war, the government must destroy the domestic currency. They have to burn the village to save the castle, but be warned, there is a nightmare scenario where this is a double cross. The government could revalue gold to $20,000, stabilize the system, lure the world back into the dollar, and then, 5 years later, suspend convertibility again, just like Nixon did. It's the rug pull strategy. Use gold to restore confidence, then remove the gold once the confidence is back. History says they will do exactly this. So the timeline is set. The motive is clear. The only variable left is you. When the music stops in 2027, where will you be standing? Will you be holding the paper that is burning or the metal that is rising? In economics, wealth is rarely destroyed. It is merely transferred. When a currency resets, purchasing power flows like a river, away from the unaware and toward the prepared. The 2027 reset will be the largest instantaneous transfer of wealth since the fall of Rome. We need to look at the scoreboard to see who survives and who gets slaughtered. The winners. First, the gold holders. If you own physical gold before the reset, you are holding the winning lottery ticket. When the price snaps from $2,700 to $20,000, your net worth explodes by 700% overnight. Even if the government confiscates some of it or taxes the gains, you are still vastly ahead of the person holding dollars. You have preserved your purchasing power while everyone else lost theirs. Second, the debtors with hard assets. This is the counterintuitive winner. Imagine you own a $500,000 farm with a $400,000 fixed-rate mortgage. The dollar devalues by 90%. Your farm is now priced at $5 million in the new, debased currency. Third, the gold miners. The government can confiscate gold bars from a vault. It is much harder to confiscate gold that is still in the ground. Mining companies like Newmont or Barrick sit on millions of ounces of reserves. When gold hits $20,000, their profit margins don't just double, they go up 10x or 20x. Their stock prices will go parabolic. They are the leveraged play on the reset. The losers. First, the cash savers. This is the moral tragedy of the reset. The people who did everything right, worked hard, saved money, put it in a bank account, are the primary victims. If you have $100,000 in savings and the dollar loses 90% of its value, you still have $100,000. But it now buys what $10,000 used to buy. You didn't lose money. You lost life. Decades of labor stored in currency, vaporized by a fountain pen in the Oval Office. Second, the bondholders. U.S. Treasury bonds are promises to pay dollars in the future. If those future dollars are worthless, the bond is worthless. Pension funds hold trillions in bonds. Insurance companies hold trillions. When the reset hits, the solvency of the entire retirement system collapses. Retirees will get their checks, but the checks won't pay the heating bill. Third, foreign creditors. China and Japan hold $2 trillion of U.S. debt. The reset is essentially a default on them. We pay them back in funny money. We steal their labor. This is why China is buying gold now. They know they are the target. So how do you position yourself? The window is closing, but it is not shut. Based on the history of 1933 and 1971, here are the strategies that work. Strategy 1. Physical gold, outside the system. Do not buy paper gold ETFs like GLD. In a reset, paper contracts can be settled in cash, not metal. You want physical bars and coins. Ideally, you want them stored outside of the US banking system. Allocated storage in Singapore, Switzerland, or the Caymans. If the US government issues a confiscation order, a Swiss vault will politely refuse to comply. Jurisdictional diversification is your firewall. Strategy 2. The mining shield. Buy shares in high-quality gold miners, particularly those with mines in safe jurisdictions like Canada and Australia. The US government might tax them, but they won't nationalize them. Miners offer the upside of gold, without the risk of having agents knock on your door to seize your bullion. Strategy 3. The debt hedge. Acquire productive real assets, rental properties, farmland, small businesses, and finance them with long-term fixed-rate debt. Let inflation pay off your loans. You are essentially shorting the dollar and going long on reality. Strategy 4. Sovereign resilience. Have a passport, have a backup plan. If the reset triggers social chaos, and it likely will, you want options. Food reserves, energy independence, community. Wealth is useless if you cannot protect it. The board is set. The pieces are moving. Trump's plan isn't a secret, it's a strategy. He intends to save the American state by sacrificing the American currency. We are approaching the end of a 50-year experiment. Since 1971, the world has operated on money backed by nothing but faith. That faith is running out. The debt is too high. The geopolitical trust is shattered. The mathematics are undeniable. Trump's plan to bring back the gold standard is not a nostalgic dream. It is a ruthless calculation. It is the only way to clear the ledger without admitting bankruptcy. By revaluing gold, they can reset the system. By devaluing the dollar, they can erase the past. The hardest part of this transition won't be financial. It will be psychological. We are accustomed to a world where money is stable and prices are predictable. We are about to enter a world where the definitions of value change daily. A world where a millionaire might be poor and a farmer might be rich. You must unclench your mind from the old rules. The rule that said, cash is safe. The rule that said, bonds are low risk. The rule that said, the government will fix it. Those rules apply to the old system. In the new system, they are financial suicide. The reset is coming. It might be Trump in 2027. It might be BRICS in 2026. It might be a market collapse next Tuesday. But gravity always wins. You have been warned. The signals are flashing red. The insiders are moving. The history books are open to the page marked 1933. You have a choice. You can ignore this. You can hope that the $37 trillion debt just disappears by magic. Or you can act. You can trade your paper promises for real assets. You can position yourself on the right side of the wealth transfer. The gold standard is returning. Not because they want it to, but because they have no other choice. The dollar is dead. Long live the dollar. This is economy money. If this video changed how you see the money in your pocket, subscribe. Because the story of the next 10 years will be the story of who holds the gold and who holds the bag. We'll see you on the other side of the reset.